Classical Conversations presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today, I'm super excited to talk to Dr. Richard Snyder. He brings his expertise in visual rhetoric, poetics, and digital humanities to his work at Northwest University. That's in Kirkland, Washington. His forthcoming Routledge book on electronic literature explores experimental forms of digital literacy production, while his teaching spans technology, communication, and rhetoric. I'm sure we'll find out what all that means. And of course, as technology continues transforming culture, his insights on AI and faith provide timely guidance for navigating these rapidly evolving landscapes. Dr. Snyder, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, as we were getting started, of course, we'll try not to talk just about AI because I know everyone's super excited about that. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your family and how did you get to Northwest?
Yeah, so I'm married to Martha. We met at Northwest, so I'm a Northwest alumnus, and we have three little kids. Well, one of them's not so little. They're getting there. I have a 11-year-old boy named Oliver, a 7-year-old girl named Luna, and then our almost 2-year-old is Caspian. And so we both went to Northwest. We met here. And so it's really great to be back as a faculty member. And we also, we have a lot of connections in the area. So it's nice to be back in this area.
Well, nice. So, so Northwest University, you teach all sorts of different things about technology, communication, rhetoric. So, yeah, tell us, what is, digital has gone and done great things for our society and also has provided access to terrible things. We know about the dangers of screen time and the development of children, but they're throwing iPads into every single classroom. So, you talk about digital humanities. So what is digital humanities? What can that tell us to help us have a flourishing life?
Yeah. So the thing I like about the digital humanities is it's using a lot of those tools from the humanities, right? So it's a continuation of the humanities. My background is originally in literature, although there's a strong dose of history in my graduate training, and specifically early modern history, so 16th and 17th century in Europe, and history of the Reformation. So, a lot of the tools and methodologies have kind of changed with newly available technologies. And so we take those new technologies and say, well, how do we ask these questions about literature, about history, about art using these tools? So a common example early on in the digital humanities, or what was then called humanities computing, was using doing text mining or distant reading. So you take a whole corpus or corpora of texts and read them with a machine and try and understand how is language evolving over time? What are the kind of trends? And so those are things you could only really do, because one person can read hundreds of texts and kind of come to a conclusion, but a machine can read 100,000 texts and kind of give you an overview. And so it's pretty interesting kind of work. And so there's the methodology part of it. And so you have the digital humanities work in history and literature, in the arts. And then you also have, it's almost its own field as well. So you can do digital humanities work in, say, my field of literature, but you can, you also, you're kind of part of this community of people that are doing that same sort of work and trying to imagine new kinds of work. So it also gets to things like distribution of your scholarship, publication of your scholarship. And it also has its own, it has developed its own sort of critical lens, critical way of thinking. And so it tends to be very critical of technology in some ways, embrace it in others, and generally is just interested in new developments. But there are a number of things that they prioritize. So it's it has its own conversations and things like that. I find that the digital humanities, while I don't just click accept on everything the digital humanities puts out there, I find that it really helps me in my work to understand what does scholarship look like going forward, what could it look like going forward, and then kind of how is the production of knowledge changing as we encounter these new tools. But I also find as academics, we're also a little more free. We're not directly connected to big tech. And so we're a little freer to be honest about the downsides of technology and to look at that and be interested in that. And so there's a lot of intersections with things like technology studies that looks at, just kind of a sociological look at how does technology influence us, which is, of course, a huge topic right now. So to bring that to students in the classroom, I think is really valuable. And I've really enjoyed being a part of that community in the digital humanities just because I'm a big nerd. So I've always kind of been interested in technology. And so to pair those things together has worked really well for me.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is going to be straight into what digital humanities is, but I look at like X, formerly known as Twitter, and I've been really trying to, learn that platform, engage it. So like one of the things that obviously you got 280 characters
Yeah.
limit, and you can only like put so much stuff into that, and then you have like the advertisements are in the Twitter reply. So, they've kind of incentivized Twitter threads. You've got people like there's a guy named Culture Critic. I think he has like 1 million followers, and he's always just talking about how the old world did things versus now. And he's putting them into threads and it's getting millions or views. So, yeah, are things like that, like how much is this technology driving it? Because even on Facebook, they've got above the fold and below the fold. So how much do you see of that kind of technology where all these people are on social media now helping drive how maybe you put out literature or promotions or
Mhm.
get your research out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think digital humanities scholars tend to be interested in distributing via a variety of platforms. I've seen a lot of them be interested in publicly available work, stuff that's freely available, making use of a lot of channels. Like, I mean, Twitter was huge for the digital humanities in the early 2010s, mid 2000s, early 2010s, when it was really kind of coming of its own. And it, yeah, we tend to be pretty active on a whole bunch of different platforms and getting the word out about the kind of work we're doing, and also critical of those platforms. So it's a really interesting kind of ecosystem. But to give you an example of a couple of different types of digital humanities projects, tend to look different than the traditional academic projects, and so for my dissertation, for example, I wrote a dissertation, which is book length document, kind of arguing for how to read Shakespeare and his contemporaries. We really need to understand the visual culture of the period, because when they say something, they're seeing something in their head that's different than what we're seeing. And so the digital humanities part of that is I designed and built a database-driven web app that then brought images from the period into the reading experience as you're reading through it. So that's one example of a kind of project. Other projects just make use of freely available platforms. There's one called Scalar that is, I believe it's out of SCU. It's for making kind of digital books online, and they're kind of freely published. They're easily navigable, and they're doing a few things that books don't do as well. So that's very popular for scholarship and open textbooks and things like that. So, and then of course, like you said, engaging with social media, engaging with all the platforms that are already out there, popular ones like story maps with ArcGIS, and going all the way down to using Facebook and Twitter and saying, how do we create some public engagement here around the work we're doing?
Yeah, so the work you're doing, one of the things that you guys just put forth in Northwest is this tech and culture course, and you're making it part of your core curriculum. And, I think that's probably a positive move, not knowing too much about it. So right? I mean, I remember Barack Obama was almost the first Facebook president. That he got a lot of movement there. There was a lot of Twitter censoring people in 2020, 2019 and 2020
Yeah.
was a big part of that last election. And then obviously we've got Elon Musk buying Twitter, renaming it X, cutting 80% of the workforce, and it seems to still be working pretty well. Now he's Donald Trump's president. The left's mouthpieces, their kind of media presence is falling apart. ABC, CBS, all these different groups are laying
Yeah.
people off, canceling
Traditional
popular
media.
shows. So, I like to call it legacy media. Traditional media gives it a connotation I don't think we should give it anymore.
That's a good
But
point. Yeah.
tech and culture. Yeah, so I think Christians, we've seen the internet be used for good, and we've been seeing it use it for bad. So, yeah, why is tech and culture now part of your core curriculum?
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there, right? You've seen it be used for good, you've seen it be used for bad, and in Kirkland here, we're across the pond from Seattle, so we're right here in the Silicon Forest. We got Google one block down the street. Google Maps and several other parts of Google live right here, and of course, we're 10 minutes from Redmond, where is the main Microsoft campus, and so we are. We have a lot of students in this area that are interested in tech, that are probably going into tech in some way. We have a lot of students who aren't as well, but we feel strongly that there's a Christian obligation to really understand technology carefully and to try and make use of it in a way that honors God. And so that's our lens for tech and culture. That the course began here several years ago as part of our Creatio program, and it's actually in our communications program where I teach right now. But I had this really great experience with it, teaching it for the first time, where I just tried to get some understanding of what does flourishing look like for us. What is our view of flourishing, right? Not the world's view of flourishing, but what is our view of flourishing based on our faith principles at Northwest, and really digging into that with students. So students are a little surprised, I think, at first, because the first couple of weeks we don't talk a ton about technology. We actually talk about what is the good life for the Christian, and for the Christian today, right? What does that look like? And of course, students, they start picking this up, and they want to talk about this. They really want to talk about, the first thing they'll go to is, I don't even have to get them to talk. They'll just start talking about screen time, right? Because they're at this age where mom and dad most of them aren't living at home. They're not with mom and dad. We have a lot of residential students, and it's up to them, right? And they're navigating this, and they're actually seeing, maybe some of them for the first time, what is this impact on me? What am I actually getting from this? How do I feel when I'm done scrolling on Instagram, right? And so, but of course, then many of them want to talk about positive things. And advances in the medical field, or even people getting the word out, the word of God out to communities via the internet. So there's all these things we're wrestling with. And then I use these models of technology and culture from science and technology studies. Ultimately, we find all of them lacking because they're not based on the same basis for flourishing that we consider as people of faith. But we ask that question. We say, what is this relationship? Is technology just sort of doing things to us, and we have no agency, no control? Or is it all our agency or control? And I try and get them to never just say, this is bad. This one technological development is bad across the board. I mean, of course, there are some probably, but generally we live in the middle, where, okay, so there's some good things about this. There's some bad things about this. And I think there's a lot of anxiety around that. How do I engage with this? Do I not engage with this? And we say, let's think about how this could support a Christian view of human flourishing. Tell me how this could, and how can it not? And let's draw that line for ourselves, because we have we have an account maybe with this social media company, or we've bought this device, right? Like, where are you going to draw the line for yourself based on really careful thought, not on the cool factor, which I talk about a lot with new technology. It kind of dazzles us, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a really exciting exploration. I'm so glad that we've put it in our core curriculum. And so all of our students are going to be taking it. And they'll also learn a little bits and pieces of coding along the way that give them an understanding of really basic things like, what is an algorithm? Well, you can build one, right? Let's build one. Or how could I possibly use this for good? Well, let's pull from, the American Bible Society API and make a little endpoint to pull different Bible verses from it, and think about new kinds of apps you could create. And so we do a lot of creative work in there too, just trying to figure out, if this doesn't support human flourishing, what would, and could you build it, and what would that look like? So it's a lot of fun for me. As you can tell, I love teaching it. And honestly, the students just really respond to it because they want to talk about this stuff. So,
well, it's a big portion of all of our lives. I mean, most of us probably have that, once a week you've spent 14 more hours on your cell phone than you did last week. And you're like, how did I spend 14 more hours on my cell phone? I don't remember doing that. You talk about human flourishing and through a biblical worldview or a biblical lens. Like, can you give us a real short definition of, what does that mean, or what are you hoping that the students come to during that conversation?
Yeah, we talk about, kind of a hedonic view the world might have, eat, drink, and be merry. Sort of, you're here to experience things and experience the world, and it's wonderful. And we talk about the eudaimonic view, right, which is about the good of sort of society and what is the ultimate good of society. But we kind of talk about both of those traditional Western views as still lacking, right? So even if we're seeking the good of society, we're not doing it in a biblical way necessarily. So we talk a lot about purpose, and I try to get them actually to write some of these definitions for themselves and say, what does it look like to use Twitter, right? Or X, for example? What is it like to use that in a way consistent with a view of biblical purpose that says, I'm actually not here just to make society good and work better. I'm here for an even grander purpose than that. So it's everything from, reaching out, talking about what is actually, how does the gospel frame our understanding of a tool, right? And we talk, part of this, I think that's really important is also in the first few weeks, we spend time talking about the term technology and how it's kind of evolved over time, and how we tend to throw it around about anything that seems new to us. Most of us wouldn't take a pen like this and say this is technology, but of course it is, right? According to every definition of the term, this is technology. And so we talk about why are some things kind of invisible to us? And how have they shaped us, right? How has a pen shaped my behavior, right? Plato was very concerned about writing because people weren't going to remember as much. And so a biblical view of flourishing really asks us to look carefully at all of the artifacts in our lives, all of the tools in our lives, and says, I'm not just here to hang out. I'm not just here to have a good time. And I think this is a wonderful time to grab students and get them thinking about this. I'm here for a purpose, right? So I have work to do. I have a job to do. I have a lot more to think about and to consider when I'm looking at a new app on my phone, or even looking at getting a phone, right? I have a lot more to consider than simply, is this going to be fun, or is this going to make me feel bad? That's not even the question, right? Is this going to interfere in some way, or is it going to support a purpose-driven existence with God? That one that allows me to be with Him, and then also to bring Him to others. That's a big commitment that we're making when we become Christians. And I think trying to get them to think of the gravity of that is really important. And they enjoy it. They lean into it. Getting them to ask those why questions at this age is a lot of fun. So,
hey everyone, quick interruption to today's show. I want to tell you all about the Excel Summer Leadership Camp, where your student will embark on a transformational journey in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. This adventurous 12-day summer camp is for passionate challenge age leaders, 15 to 19, looking to discover God's truth, discern wisely, and live wholeheartedly. They'll build lasting friendships in the context of community, embark on thrilling adventures like camping, rock climbing, and whitewater rafting, receive expert training and certification in categories from CPR to wilderness first aid, and each aspect of the camp is woven together to help you learn to discover truth, discern wisely, and take godly action in the context of real life situations. Sign up for a summer camp virtual presentation at theexcelcamp.org. That's theexcelcamp.org. It's camps this summer. Go check it out. And now back to our show. Yeah, my mom, she talks about that. She says, obviously like the invention of writing made it so that we had less memory. And then, of course, Gutenberg's printing press, made it so we didn't need to write as much because then you could just, copy and paste in some eventually. And of course, there's always benefits to those technological advances. And so I think as Christians, are we doing a good job looking at our past? Okay, when this happened, what was the good things that happened? What were the bad things? What were some of the assumptions that maybe we had as Christian leaders on how it would be used versus, how did it actually get used in the end, so that we can make better decisions and assumptions going forward. And I think it's going to be very vital, especially in AI. And, I think about, there's obviously there's multiple education, issues or trade-offs that you have to discuss. And then you get into business as well. And then, of course, we don't really have AI yet. It's just really large language learning models. And, of course, there's all these different things that we could get into. But, as you look at, new technology, AI and faith. So, one of the things that you hear, of course, is how can we use this really for good? Because, obviously there's kids who are using it to, write a 500-word essay on me that the professor gave me. Obviously that's, we don't necessarily need to talk about that. I think everyone kind of recognizes that's kind of morally or, would be considered, cheating.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more nuanced when you get in after that. So how should Christians be approaching AI, especially, you mentioned Microsoft and Google. Mm-hmm. I don't really want their worldview to be in all of the AI models. So break down what is AI and how Christians should be thinking about it right now and influencing it.
Yeah. How many hours do we have? I think first of all, AI is great branding. I think it's just what you said. Of course, we've got large language models. We've got agentic AI now, which is, getting closer to some sort of general AI. Who knows if we'll achieve some sort of, general artificial intelligence. I'm tired of worrying about that. There's enough going on right now, but I think we have to.
For robot overlords, I just embrace you guys. So just so you're aware.
Yeah, just so you know for the future. Yeah. So when you're when you're watching this video, when you're summarizing this video for somebody. No, I think we have a lot of opportunities right here, but there are also a lot of unknowns, and things are evolving very, very quickly. And so that's why I use AI as actually a case study right now in tech and culture. Like, we're always talking about AI, we're learning about it because it's our moment, right? There are a lot of technological innovations going on, but this is the one that's really changing our lives in the moment right now. We do things differently, some of us anyway, than we did a year ago or 2 years ago. And so part of it is just asking, I think, the question, like, what can this actually do, right? So getting beyond that cool factor is really important. This is the thing with new technology, is they always have a cool factor. And then very quickly after that cool factor fades, they have a period of domestication where they just become normal, right? And we're already in that period. We've moved past people adopting it. Now it's just becoming a normal thing that you use. You probably remember when this happened with smartphones, and it just became a thing everybody had in their pocket. And so in that in-between space, we have to really look carefully at what's going on, right? And so With large language models, the thing I'm always trying to get people to think about, whether it's faculty here or students here, is what it's designed to do, right? What is this actually designed to do? And with large language models, as impressive, and they truly are very impressive from a programming standpoint, but as impressive as they are, they're designed to give you results that the most probable result based on its training data, not necessarily the most accurate, the most helpful, the most probable. And so when you understand that, you can start to say, okay, what can I do with this and what can't I do with this? Because they're always going to give you the thing that's the most down the middle from that request, right? What's the most down the middle recipe for spaghetti, right? What's the most down the middle 3-day workout? That's what they're designed to do. They're not designed to innovate in the way we can innovate. And so there's a number of limitations like that. I always think in terms of affordances and limitations. So advantages and limitations, sorry. And the limitations, I think, are pretty clear. Of course, you have hallucination and all those issues. We're still dealing with 20-30% hallucination in most of the big models. We're just making things up, right? We're still dealing with that.
Yeah,
We're kind of getting there. But
I was doing some research and we use Claude AI, and I prompted it, and it gave me some interesting information about a study. And then I said, "Oh yeah, can you give me the reference for that study?" And it said, "Well, maybe I shouldn't have called it a study." It said, said, "But if you look at the data that is on this website and correlated it, this is the result you would get." And I was like, "Yep, don't trust the AI yet."
Yeah, it's pretty slick that way. It's kind of like somebody you've caught in being really charismatic, right? They're like, "Oh, well, actually, I don't know as much about that as I thought." Yeah, I think one thing I found even with other faculty is everyone's really busy, right? We're all busy people, and it's tough to keep up with these developments. So I think it's very difficult in the kind of fog of war right now to say, what are these limitations? What are these things capable of? What are they not capable of? You have people using these right now a lot for therapy, right? For counseling. I mean, like, is that okay? Is that useful to you? Maybe. But know the limitations of the machine before you try and use it for something like that. So I think it's the first part of the answer there is it's just a simple thing. It's really knowing what it's designed to do. And then you asked about kind of the big tech Silicon Valley worldview that is infusing these. And of course it is, right? Because they have the training data, first of all, is the entire internet. So plus, hundreds of thousands of millions of books. So that, that's not necessarily my worldview. My worldview, if you took the internet and put it in a blender, you wouldn't end up with my worldview, right? I definitely think the important thing to recognize is it doesn't share our worldview, right? And it's been coached beyond that training data by companies like Google or Meta, and it's gotten to a point where that coaching has it, is reinforcing even other things. So it's very far off from where I would want to be. And you could say, please act like a mid-30s, like a Christian, with this background, and please talk to me like that. But that's not the same as sharing your values, and it never will be, right? And so it's really important to understand that when you're prompting you are not talking to your best friend that totally thinks the way you think. You're just not. And there have already been studies about, people confiding in AI and talking to AI like that, and really trying to treat it like a second brain. And of course it just isn't. It's a different thing. And so, but there are these great, there are a lot of Christian efforts out there. I went to a faith tech meetup a few months ago, and there was a lot of buzz around, one of these kind of Bible-based AI programs. It was designed to try and help people get into a local church. So talk with you a bit about your questions about the Bible, but then really try and get you into a local community, right? Which of course we've talked about in my class. That really supports a biblical view of flourishing, where you're in community with other Christians. It's not trying to separate you out, right? It's supporting that by saying, yeah, we'll talk with you about your Bible questions based on its knowledge of the Bible and commentaries and other materials. But we're also going to try very early on to locate where you're at, connect you with the faith community of fellow believers, because the vision just isn't being disconnected from each other, right? That's just the biblical vision is not sitting in little rooms by ourselves and talking to a machine. It's just not. And so, but people come to the internet with questions about the Bible. Can you grab those people and get them into community through that wandering process where they might be alone right now? So that's a great example.
Yeah, you could see, like, you have a question and AI is, or the large language learning model is saying that I'm the expert, versus you could use that same information. And like in your example, they're asking some question, but there's, this is what I think about it, or this is what I've been programmed to think about it, or this is what the average, Presbyterian thinks about it, depending on what the question is. But did you know Pastor Smith at the PCA church, 3 miles from your house, wrote a book on this? You should go ask him. Here's his email address, or here's the church email address, and then pointing them to, I'm not actually the expert. The expert is a person nearby that would probably be, love to talk to you. Or, so and so's sermon notes. This Baptist preacher lives 12 miles from you. You should go chat with him about this to get your answers. Your questions really answered, versus, this is the end all be all. I've done everything that needs to be done, and you can just listen to me. So it's a great opportunity, I guess. And I'd hate to see Christians be behind the 8 ball once again,
Right.
as another technology, because it used to be Christians were on the forefront of technology.
Yeah.
And that was, things seem to be getting better for society. And since we've relinquished that to the pagans, the technology innovations have not necessarily produced human flourishing, and have
Right.
instead produced, right? I mean, you see depression in, young girls, and, these image issues, and, all of these different things associated with these social media companies, and parents don't know what to do about it. Or everyone else has 12 has a cell phone, so they're going to get their kid do it. So it's there are, throughout society, right, there's always questions that each generation has to answer that previous generations don't necessarily have a very concrete way of saying, this is how we handled it. I was 13, I think, when we got the first computer, and it was, that big, and it had like 56 megabytes of RAM. How will you ever fill this up? Or whatever it was back then. So big changes.
I love this question of, well, you have to start first, even without the question. You have to start with, things don't have to be the way they are with technology, right? These are tools, and we've developed these tools based on needs we see in the world, right? So when you strip it back that far, you get to say it could be different. We could make something different, right? AI could look different, and there are a lot of American Bible Society is another organization working with AI very closely right now to support their work. And so it could be different, right? Social media could look different. The dating apps that are out there could support a biblical view of relationship. And so you just gotta, I think you have to continually remind yourself that this is not the only way this technology can work. It's not the only thing it can do. So once you do that, it's freeing, and it's a creative space, right? To say, how can we innovate? And I think Christians across the board, whether it's in my class or when I'm talking with other potential partners, other tech groups, like Christians are really creative. And we
Mhm.
have a different view of what flourishing looks like. And we're concerned about that. That is not a secondary concern for us. Like, we're not driven by, we want this thing to be new and flashy and cool or profit driven or whatever. Our first concern is, what is this doing for and to people, right? And once we actually get to ask that question, I think Christians have a lot of really creative answers, and have in the past used technology, like you said, even driven innovation. And I'd love to see more of that.
Well, I think it's super exciting to hear that your students are going on and working at some of these tech companies, and they're getting to go through this course and wrestle through these questions, and hopefully doing it in a way that they can bring their biblical worldview and at least help keep these large language learning models or whatever else comes down the pipeline to a more, I said, morally aligned view with what the Bible teaches us. So, yeah, as we get wrapped up here, just tell us a little bit about Northwest University. Yeah, it's in Kirkland, Washington, which is
Hmm.
up near Seattle.
Yeah.
What type of students are typically attracted to there? Yeah, what are some reasons for people to come check it out?
Yeah, we have a lot of students from a variety of backgrounds at Northwest. We draw from the whole Northwest region, and of course from Hawaii. And we also have students coming from all across the country. We tend to serve students who are in this greater Northwest area: Alaska, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, California. And we have a really strong community identity here. That's the word that always gets thrown around, is community, but actually it's not from the top down. It's the word you hear from the bottom up. And I can speak kind of uniquely to this as an alumnus, or not uniquely, but with a certain perspective. When I came here in 2005, I was really adopted by the community here, um, and being back on the faculty side, it's really fascinating. This is only my second year. This is my 10th year teaching higher ed, but my second year here, and I'm really fascinated by just how committed our faculty are. I think this is a real uh, standout thing about Northwest, is my colleagues, my fellow faculty members, and our staff, right, are just so committed to the call to be here, that I'm just constantly surprised, right? So I'm coming from a secular institution where I was teaching, and I love being here because when I interact with my colleagues, it's just clear we're just directly aligned in our mission and our heart and our entire worldview. And being here now as a faculty member, I'm like, man, I get why in 2005 I loved being here so much, and it was because I wandered around the hallways, and just spent time outside of professors' offices. And now I have students doing that outside of my office every day, and I just love being around them. It's a place you can really get to know your professors. So I love it here, and we tend to get a lot of actually CC students. We have, which is one reason I was really excited to talk to you. We have they're always the standout students in my classes. So it's funny because sometimes I don't know. And then the other day I found out that one of my newer CC students was like, oh yeah, and there's this person and this person and this person. And I said, you're naming all of my best, not just great earning students, but my students who are like driving the conversation, right? Who are asking me the big questions. And we get into a class like rhetoric and persuasion, my upper level rhetoric class. They're ready to go, they're, which
Yeah.
is wonderful. They don't, some of the other students, kind of look sideways at me when I'm throwing around all these Greek terms or Latin terms, and the CC students are like, okay, I'm on board. Let's keep going. And so they're really driving things a lot of the time, and I just love having them. And there's a lot of students like me who came from a private Christian background that wasn't CC. I'm jealous. I wish we had done that, to be honest. Found some of those things later. But I come from a private Christian background, and we have a lot of students coming from public school and Running Start and stuff like that. So it's diverse in that way, but it's very aligned. Our motto is Jesus first, Jesus always, and that's kind of, we are what it says on the tin, as it were. So Yeah, that's a little about northwest. We're also Kirkland is a very fun place to live. So it's located, just up the hill from Lake Washington, and so it's just a beautiful place to be too when it's not raining. Even when it's raining, the campus looks great, but it is a little rainy around here.
Yeah, my dad worked for Boeing, and so we lived in Renton, Washington for 5 of the first 6 years of my life. So
very cool. Yeah, my dad was a Boeing guy too. So yeah,
nice.
In Auburn.
What's the website?
It's just northwestu.edu. Yeah,
northwestu.edu. We'll put that in the show notes.
Sure.
Dr. Snyder, thank you so much for being on the show today. The conversation around AI and technology and our Christian worldview and how we need to be prepared for it is fascinating and something that our listeners are really excited about. And I think it's really cool that you guys are implementing that part of your core curriculum. So go check it out. Thank you for joining us on today's show. Be sure to share this episode with a friend. Until next time, God bless.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.